welcome to another Head2Head, and good morning, Keith Sutherland.
Good morning, Dennis.
Keith, council elections this weekend, there's a lot going on, and even Councillor Helen Leach, I noticed in this morning's press, indicating some concerns around the council or the voting process around the election.
It was a very interesting concept, that one, and I do think that there is change in the air. There's no doubt that people want things different, want new ideas, new faces. I think that probably only 3 or 4 of the existing councillors will get back. Going back to Councillor Leach's comments that she's worried about security of her vote, because I believe that 30 to 40% of the votes have already been counted, not counted I should say, have been put in the system, and of course they're locked away. They're not opened until such time as the election starts, the count is on, and the scrutineers will be there.
Well, I don't know where it goes from here. What happens next then? I mean, you would think that the VEC, Electoral Commission, would have to take any comments of a person in public office seriously, I guess.
I think so, and I think that there has been a discussion about that early this week with the VEC, talking about things like that, but it hasn't been a question in the past. I don't think it's a question at all. I think that, as I said, it's probably too much television going around and conspiracy theories. I think it'll all be fair and above board and there won't be any problems, but anyway.
Staying local, Keith, Radius, that was a bolt out of the blue for me. I mean, Radius doing incredible things with people with disabilities locally, and moved, what would it be, 12 months ago, I guess, a little over 12 months, into that big old Toy World building. That was a real shock.
I was a bit surprised that we actually had Kath McDonald, the CEO at the time, here on the program, talking about the changes and what they're going to implement there. And I thought, well, it was all very bold. It was very ambitious, a lot of money to go into it, and I guess that they might have bitten off more than they could handle. The whole situation, of course, comes back to money. Such a shame for the organisation, because what happens with the people involved, where do they go? And I think it comes down to a wages situation, that they are having to pay full-toed odds to on wages these days. As I understand, I can't verify that, but if that's the case, it is very difficult to operate that sort of a business.
Well, I picked up on that too, Keith. As I understand it, the Fair Work Commission or something indicated that those same employees should enjoy the full wage. And I think they indicated, the report I read anyway, indicated that, and these are rough numbers, I would encourage people to look up for themselves, but the information that I saw indicated that Radius's bottom line had been bumped by $1 million. And that's a hell of a lot for an organisation like that.
Well, you can't sustain that sort of level, and if you do have to pay, I don't quite understand how it'll all work, and going forward, there is a major problem. So, yeah, such a terrible situation for all people involved, families, the whole lot, and that business, because I think I used to go in there for a coffee to support them, and it's a very difficult situation.
Well, it's typical for me. I look at it and I think all these do-gooders, and I'm on about do-gooders always, I guess, but
quite often, Dennis,
the do-gooders who scream from the rooftops, these people should earn the equal wage and so on and so on. Well, I've seen these people going to work every day, and you wouldn't get a happier bunch of people turning up to their job. And I think therein lies the problem, that it's all very well to have an idealistic view of the world, to say, well, people with a disability deserve, have to have the common wage, the award wage. Look, it's horses for courses, and these people in the organisation, no one would argue, do an incredible job. Well, thanks very much, do-gooders, for screaming for the rooftops, because you've knocked it on their head, and all those people, they're at the moment, they're still talking about trying to salvage that situation so that they remain in the workplace. But gee, talk about buggering things up, for the want of a better expression. It drives me crazy. It
does, and I don't know where they go, but let's hope that somehow they can resurrect it, because they've got a terrific board of management, and I guess that where it's gone wrong, I don't know. But anyway, that'll be sorted out in the near future, but I worry about those people involved in the system.
Well, you read that, and then this week as well, there's a report come out indicating that on ABC that 3 million Australians believed to be living under the poverty line. And I think, at a time when we've got everyone screaming again from the rooftops about the refugee problem, and Australia should be doing this and Australia should be doing that, to have 3 million Australians living under the poverty line is an absolute... Well, I couldn't believe the number when I heard the number. I just could not believe that number.
I think that there's no doubt that that's the case. Depends on the level of what you're calling the poverty line.
Well, and Bendigo's overrepresented, Keith, on this.
And Bendigo has always been overrepresented, because I understand about 30% of people involved in the Bendigo community are on some sort of welfare benefits. So it's a very difficult situation. So it's been mostly the single family parents that are looking after their kids. sending them to school, paying rent and all these sorts of things. And as we know, rents have skyrocketed over the last few years, not so much in Bendigo. It's a very terrible situation for people to survive on that. So yes, there's no easy answers for that one at all.
It's an interesting time in which we live, Keith, or they're interesting times in which we live, I should say, because there's so much going on. And I mean, we've talked before too about people's general level of discontent. And I heard Obama on about Trump and sort of saying, people need to have a real good look at this, and good luck to Obama for that, for coming from there too. But I don't think it's appropriate for people in power at the moment, any of them, to be claiming to be able to speak on behalf of the people who are absolutely fed up with abuse of power in so many areas of the world at the moment. Whether you've had it, whether you have it in government or whether you have it in private enterprise or whether you have it in unions, the level of greed and the level of self-advancement that's so evident, no wonder people are cheesed off with what we term the establishment, I guess, and they're looking for change.
I think you're partially right in saying that, but I think where you're probably missing the point about what Obama said, it's a very serious point that he makes about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, before the election, is crying foul, the system is rigged. Everything's rigged against him. And all of a sudden, after this election, I would hate to be, if it's going to be President Clinton, I'd hate to be her, because the followers of Donald Trump will believe the system was rigged. He's putting it out there every day of his life, and that's wrong, because all of a sudden we're going to have a nation in America that believes what Donald Trump's told them. It's rigged. The voting's wrong, and it's really wrong before the votes are even counted. Okay, the votes are out there, people are placing their votes, but at the end of the day, they haven't been counted, so you shouldn't be saying things, because it's creating hatred, it's creating a sort of a sense of misbelief and mistrust. It's just terrible. And that's the point that Obama was saying, and I'm full marks, I support him totally. But yes, we live in a world of change, and people are in it for the wrong reasons. There's no altruistic service anymore. It's just for the wrong reasons.
With the greatest respect, Keith, I disagree with you. I think Obama's missing the point as well. If people really looked into this, and you hear the vox pops when they ask people on the street what their concerns are, it's more a case of less trust in the establishment, so less trust of people in power. And when you see the ridiculous examples, even here in Australia, we've just talked about the impact on disability employment here. It's for somebody saying, all right, let's have some more red tape and let's have the award wage through the Fair Work Commission for people with a disability. All right, so you hit something on the head. Whether it's pensions and people now having the threshold for full pension impacted, so that people with $290,000 or something are in a position now where they can't fund their own retirement, but they're impacting their pension. There's no incentive to save. If you look at aged people in Australia, again, there's discrimination and a totally inept, inadequate and unable to comprehend reality level of thinking going on in the powers that be, the establishment again, people getting cheesed off with them, because they're making rules to say, right, Keith's got enough money to sell his house and pay for his care in a care facility, and I've seen this happen with
many times over. I can relate to it.
Absolutely, and yet the person in the room next to you has never saved, or for whatever reasons, has never, is not in a position to be able to sell a house and pay for the care, but they still get the same care you do. And I think no wonder people are looking at all this and saying, we've got pensioners doing it bloody
very tough. Yes, I agree.
You've got unemployed doing it tough. You've got the disabled doing it tough, and yet you've got politicians with snouts in the trough. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Joe Hockey would have lost too much sleep last night about either the Trump situation over there or about what's going on with pensioners, the unemployed and disabled people here in Australia. But these guys make the rules and ride off into the sunset with a whole different set of tricks in their bag.
And they do. And in his case, I'm not sure if he has been able to double dip in the sense that he gets his parliamentary pension from Australia, then he gets paid to be an ambassador in the United States.
Or not, he's entitled to.
Yeah, that's right. That's the point. And then we have bankers, as you discussed last week, earning $10 million a year with their bonuses and things like that. So there is a level of discontent in the community, rightfully so. And the poor pensioners that have been giving their all for this country over a long period of time get to the end of their life and they're disadvantaged. So the system is wrong.
Well, I'm certainly not suggesting I'm backing Trump in that sense, but what I'm saying
Well, I hope you're not. I'm certainly not backing Trump.
All I'm saying is I totally get why the vast majority of people here and there are absolutely cheesed off with the ones in power, whether it's Seth Blatter or whoever the hell it is that's running the show at the time. People are just fed up with the abuse of power and abuse of trust. And understandably so, when you look at the realities on the ground compared to how the powers that be conduct themselves and live their own lives. So,
well, people always take advantage of a corrupt system, and they get away with it for so long, and then all of a sudden it does catch up with them ultimately, we hope.
We hope. You're heading off to something. Daniel Andrews is coming to Bendigo, I think, today, Keith. And
I thought you'd be pleased about that, Dennis, that Daniel Andrews is in town for a bit of a Loddon Campaspe think tank thing. And
well, it's tonight, I think, isn't it?
It is tonight, yes.
I'm just hoping he doesn't take the train, Keith, because if he takes a train, chances are he might, if he leaves Melbourne at, say, 5 o'clock, and I saw this happen to somebody last night, a family member left Melbourne at 5 and got in at nearly 9, and to head down in the morning for the commute on the rail, we don't have rail, of course, we have buses at the moment, took 2 3/4 hours. I mean, I don't know whether the bus was passed by a Cobb & Co coach drawn by horses at the time.
You're being very cynical this morning, Dennis.
Oh, I guess I do have a beamer bonnet because I'm seeing these things that are so frustrating. For God's sake, one rail line from here to Kyneton while they're fixing.
Well, that's not Daniel Andrews' fault, and I think with Jacinta Allen, the Transport Minister, you've got to have some pain before we have some gain, because at the end of the day, we're getting rid of rail crossings, they're getting rid of all these other problems. We'll have a first-class rail system between Bendigo and Melbourne, and then we'll get the benefit. But in the meantime, we do have to suffer. I understand if it's a family member, you can relate to the hardship that they have to go through, but it's got to be done sometime. It's been left by successive governments for years to do nothing. Yes, we should have had a double line all the way to Bendigo. We didn't, but we've got to contend with it now and try and rectify that problem as best we can. So I'm sorry, Dennis, for your family member, and I'm sorry you've got to be in your bonnet, but there's got to be pain before you get a gain.
And look, I'll be the first to buy Jacinta a bunch of flowers, and
I hope you do. I'll hold you to that, by the way.
I'll even get a bunch for Danny Andrews if they can get the damn train system working the way it should. And working the way it should does not mean a 2.5 hour trip to Melbourne on a train, or 2 hours even. It should, you know, and the one thing I do agree with you on there, Keith, is it's all...
I'm glad we agree on some part of that one.
Well, all governments of all persuasions are culpable on that, because they've made an absolute big mess of the thing.
20 years have been nothing going into the system.
In a day and age when, you know, in China and the rest of the world, people are able to, and Japan...
300 kilometres an hour, some of the train services, and what can we have? Yes, you're right. It's a very long-winded trip from Bendigo to Melbourne and vice versa.
Absolutely it is. The council elections, Keith, what do you reckon we're going to be looking to next week then? What are you getting on the street in the way of...
Well, I think by Friday at the end of next week, we'll probably have a fair idea who's going to get elected.
How many new councillors would you tip out of the 9?
I would think out of the new council with the 9, we'll have 5 new councillors.
Really? Gee.
That's my prediction. As I said, I think there's only going to be 3 or 4, probably 4 at the outset, and that makes 5. There'll be a total change out of councillors, existing councillors in the Epilogue ward. So watch this space. It'll be very, very interesting. And we've got Cup Day next week, so no program next week, but we'll be able to talk about it the week after, about who's the new councillors, and we've obviously had most of them in here over that period of time, interviews, so it will be an interesting period for Bendigo the next 4 years.
All right, Keith, thanks for taking the time today. Hope you're backing a winner at the Cup this time.
I hope so too.
And we'll look forward to catching you the week after. Thank you for joining us today too, and we'll see you again soon too.